Hey friends, today's practice will be a strength and sculpt practice based from hands and knees. So do a warm-up video first or get warmed up, get your spine moving on your own. Find yourself a set of light-ish weights. I've got 3 pounds. You could go a little lower, a little higher, or no weights. And I'll meet you in tabletop pose. Checking in, finding your nice long neutral spine in your table, checking in with your arms, shoulders, wrists, finding that wrist crease parallel to the short edge of your mat or turned out just a little. Baby bend into the elbows, gently pressing the floor away so we're active in the shoulder. Gently drawing that belly in and up so we're active in the core. We have our knees right under our hips, our knees and our feet are the same distance apart as our hip joints. And again, just imagining that long, neutral spine. Take a moment to notice where your hips are in space. Try to keep your hips level as you bring a little more weight over to your right knee, and then start to slide your left foot back behind you, lifting the knee. And then if you can, with those hips totally level, lift that leg parallel to the floor, draw those toes back in toward your body, reach your heel away. Come back to the sensation in your shoulders. If you've got saggy, press the floor away, activate the shoulders. If you got saggy in the belly, gently draw that navel in and up. If that left glute floated a little higher than the right, we're going to try to drop it back down, but lift the heel, pull the knee, press the heel. Bringing more weight over to the left arm. Start to slide your right arm out in front of you. Rotate that pinky to face the floor. Imagine lengthening fingertips through opposite heel. Pause. Float that hand and knee back down to the mat. Let both hands, both knees rest for a moment as you either flex, extend the spine, side bend the spine, jump rope the spine. Finding neutral. Long spine, shoulders engaged, core engaged. Right leg slides back. We try to keep those glutes even as we lift the leg, pull the toe, press the heel. Maybe you can lift the leg a little higher, drop that side of the pelvis so it's level with the left, and then left arm joins. Pinky rotates to face the floor. Make sure we're not sagging into that right shoulder. Length, length, length. Fingertips to opposite heel. Floating that hand and knee back down to the mat. Lift and lower or side bend the spine. Find neutral. Come back to the first side, this time lengthening arm and leg at the same time. And then imagine you're going to bring that arm and leg out in the direction of perpendicular to your torso. Bring them back in line with the center of your mat. And one more time, out in the direction of perpendicular to the torso, back in line with the center of our mat. We'll float that hand and knee back down right to the second side. Length, fingertips to heel, floating out, back towards center, floating out, back towards center, hand and knee come back down. Step down onto your forearms, letting your elbows connect to your mat right under your shoulders, keeping those hips aligned right over the knees, letting your palms rest together or interlacing the fingers. Find a big inhale here, and then as you exhale, keeping those elbows connected to your mat, pull your hips back toward your heels. See if you can find a little stretch in your arms, shoulders, maybe upper back, maybe feel it somewhere else. And then lift yourself back through where we started. And then allow your hips to rock forward and down, shoulders to come forward of the elbows, gaze to come forward of the hands. Lift back through where we started. Exhale, drawing back. Inhaling, lift. Exhale, drawing forward. Inhaling, lift. Flowing a few more times with this movement with breath. Inhaling as we lift. Exhaling as we lower. And then lifting back through where we started. We'll pause. Release the fingertips. Step back up onto the palms. And if you are using weights today, go ahead and find your weights. We're going to take one weight and we're going to tuck it into the crease of the knee on our right leg. And we're going to take our other weight in our left hand. Our right leg is going to be doing something that looks a little bit like tiger pose as a flow, and our left arm is going to be doing a tricep kickback. So I'm really grounded in through my right arm. My fingertips are nice and wide. I'm active in that shoulder. I'm going to bring my left elbow up in toward my low ribs. I'm going to notice my arm here at 90, and we're not going to bring that weight or hand any closer to the shoulder. So it's only going to come back to 90. I'm going to try to activate my core and be neutral in my spine. And then as that bent right leg reaches behind me, the thigh reaches toward parallel to the floor and the sole of the foot points toward the ceiling. And as I do that, I press that weight in the left hand back toward the space behind me. And then I come back to my starting point. I lift and reach back to my starting point. So that was 2. Let's do 3 more for a total of 5. You can always pause and do more or do less. And then after that last one, we're going to set our weight from our left hand aside so we can reach back and pull that one from the right knee. We're back in tabletop. Start to rotate your fingers in so your middle fingers are almost pointing in toward one another. Rotate all the way out so your fingertips are pointing almost toward the sides of your mat. Bring those hands back in. Take one hand, flip it so the palm is face up, the back of the hands resting on the mat, and your fingertips are pointed in toward your knees. And if you already have some sensation in the wrist, we'll just pause here. Or if it works for you in your wrist, gently press the back of that hand down into the mat. And then switch to the other side. And bring those hands all the way back to your tabletop. Take a moment to locate the weight that you are going to tuck into that left knee crease. Grab your weight that's going to be in your right hand. Find that nice, firm, even, long, supported table pose. Lift that right elbow up beside the low ribs. And as we kick back with that right hand, bent leg lifts up behind us, sole of the foot pointing toward the ceiling, back to that starting position and flowing 5 times this side. And allowing the hand and knee to come back down, setting that right weight aside, finding that space to remove that weight from the left knee. Finding your tabletop, briefly rotating those hands in toward one another, turning them out a little bit, taking one hand, briefly flipping it, resting it on the mat, or gently pressing down. And back to tabletop. So we're going to move into a little more work here. We're doing a lot of tabletop, which means we're spending a lot of time weight bearing in these wrists. So if you prefer, you can always come up onto your soft fists, still actively pressing the floor away. If you have them and you prefer, you can always use your plank handles, which changes the angle of the wrist quite a bit. Or if you have a yoga wedge, this will change the angle of the wrist somewhat. We're not doing anything too dynamic here, so you'd probably be okay with it on the top of your mat. I always think that it works a little better with it underneath, so I have the stickiness of my mat. So from that nice firm tabletop shape, notice where those hips are in space. We're going to try to keep our hips fairly level. We're going to keep a bend in our left knee, and we're just going to lift that leg out to the side. So we're externally rotating at the left hip, but we're only going to take it as far as we can without twisting our spine. So for some of us, it's going to come out to a diagonal. It's going to be the end of our range. That's great. For some of us, it's going to come a little higher. Some of you may be able to get even a little higher, but again, as soon as it starts twisting that spine, we've gone a little far. So go ahead and bring that leg out as far as it will go without taking the spine with it. Pull your toe back in and then frog kick that heel back behind you, straightening your knee. Bend that knee, bring it back in toward the elbow. So we'll do 5 here. So now we're here 2, 3, 4, and 5. Bring it back in, set it down back on your mat. Whatever movement feels good for hip, spine. And moving toward second side, noticing our spine, noticing our hips, getting ready to float that bent knee out toward the side. And then frog, kicking it back behind for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And this time letting it come all the way back down. This time just find whatever movement feels good for your wrists. And if you were using a prop, we're going to go ahead and scoot that out of the way. In just a moment, we're going to come down onto our forearms. I'm just going to show you where we're going next. So similar setup as if we were moving toward forearm stand. We come down onto our elbows and we see that we could reach across and reach onto that opposite arm. And once we find that position, we're going to bring our hands back out. We're going to interlace the fingers, make that little cup with the hands. Our head's going to come right down onto the space just in front of the hands, with the hands supporting the head. Once our head is fully restful down on the mat, we're going to step our knees a little close together, knees still under our hips. We're going to ground into one leg, send our opposite leg back, and do some lifts moving from the glute. So go ahead and start to step your way down onto your forearms. Make your little resting spot with your hands. Step your knees in so your legs are almost touching. Bringing all your weight over to your right leg. Float that left leg back behind you. Point your toe. Lift the leg from the glute. Bring it back down. Lift the leg from the glute. Bring it back down. Lift the leg from the glute. Bring it back down. This time lift and hold. And then lift and lower at the top. Hips are a little unlevel here. That's okay. And then bringing that knee all the way back down to meet the right. Just rock your hips side to side a couple times. Pause, check in. Those knees are almost touching. Grounding through the left knee. Right leg reaches back and we lift and lower, lift and lower, lift and lower, lift and lower. Lift and hold. Little lifts at the top. Pause, bring that knee back down to meet the left. Rock your hips side to side. Pause. Release your head, release your hands so you can slide your hips all the way back to your heels. Find your child's pose. Lift your way back up towards your tabletop. Stepping back up onto the hands. Moving toward a supported side plank. Right knee stays on the mat. Right foot pivots just off the right side of the mat. Left leg slides back, knee lifts. We roll over onto the inner edge of the left foot. Heart and hips open to the left. And we take that left hand and send it all the way up overhead, fingertips reaching for the ceiling. And then we float that left leg, pull the toe, press the heel, pause. Now let that left arm float overhead, so it's reaching same direction as where your crown of head is pointing. Find a little bit of a back bend, hand and leg slightly behind you. Big inhale, exhale, pull the navel to spine, round yourself forward, bend your elbow, bend your knee, let them meet in front of your belly. Inhale, expanding everything away from the navel. We'll flow 5 times this side, drawing in 2, expand, drawing in, exhale, 3, expand. And drawing in with your exhale, expand, finding that one more drawing in. This time when we expand and find that length, we'll pause. And then allow your toes to float to the mat. Allow that hand to reach overhead. Find a big side bend. Reaching those fingertips toward the ceiling. Rotating your heart back down toward the floor, pivot back onto the ball of that left foot. Bring your right foot in, bring your left knee down. Any movement for hips, spine, wrist, anything else that feels good. Finding your foundation in tabletop. Second side, pivoting the left foot just off the left side of the mat. right leg slides back. Rolling hips and heart open to the right. Find the inner edge of that right foot. Send your right fingertips toward the ceiling. Float that right leg. Press the heel, pull the toe. Send that right arm overhead. A little bit of a back bend. Exhale, drawing in, flowing 5 times. After your 5th one, find that big side body stretch. And then lifting through those right fingertips so you can rotate your heart back down toward your mat, pivot back onto the ball of that right foot. Bring your left foot in, bring your right knee down, moving the hips and spine as feels good. Pause, bring the knees a little wide, let the toes point toward one another. Send the hips to the heels, wide knee, child's pose. Lift the palms of your hands, pressing fingertips down into the mat, making 2 little cone shapes with the hands. Slide your hands around toward the back of your mat. Make 2 tight fists with your hands. Make a few wrist circles each direction. Pause, release those hands, send them all the way back around into your extended child's pose. Activate the palms, lift back up toward your tabletop, bringing your knees back in line with the hips. We're going to lower down onto our bellies, and if you have a weight option to have a weight handy, we'll use it once we get down onto the floor. So however works for you, slow lowering your way down. If you like, bringing the hands out, rocking the hips forward and down. Shoulders land over wrists, half plank, baby bend into the elbows. Keeping that belly drawing in and up, lowering heart toward hands. As we approach the floor, we slide the heart forward, belly finds the floor, elbows drawing toward the back of the room. And pausing on your belly for a moment. Hands, shoulders, arms are just doing whatever's comfortable and supportive while we think about what's happening in the legs. So sometimes these are called yogi seals. We'll bring our knees out toward the sides of our mat. Bend our knees, lift our feet, and try to touch our heels together. So the other option here would be to take one of your weights and actually squeeze it between your feet. So you're holding that weight with your feet. And watch where we're going for just a moment, but we're gonna make sure that we do this with head, neck, and shoulders restful. So I'm gonna bring my arms down like I'm in a crocodile pose, and then I'm gonna lift and lower the legs. So go ahead and find your way down with head, neck, and shoulders so we're not causing any stress for shoulders, neck. And then with your feet or with your weight, starting those little lifts and lowers, keeping a bend in the knees, but floating the thighs from the mat and then lowering back down. Letting those legs come all the way back down. If you've got a weight between your feet, go ahead and reach back. Take it out, set it aside. Let the legs come out so the knees are at about 90 degrees. Bring those knees back in line with the hips, and then windshield wiper your legs back and forth a few times. Bringing the legs to stillness, sending your legs long on your mat, lifting your head so you can slide your hands back under your shoulder joint. Lift yourself back up through a half plank shape. Lift the hips through tabletop. Send your hips all the way to your heels. Find your child's pose. Point the fingertips, lift the palm. 2 little cone shapes with the hands. Releasing, sliding hands around to the back of the mat, making 2 tight fists, few wrist circles each direction. Release, slide those hands back into your extended child's pose, and then slow roll your way up toward kneeling. When you get to kneeling, just take a nice big shoulder shrug, up, back, down, and from here flowing right into the next part of your practice or finishing your practice, whatever you are looking for today. Thank you.